Hey people, welcome to the Pathfinder Podcast, and on today's episode I am with Jake, John and Sam from metal band Stricken from New Jersey. On this episode we talk about their latest releases, finding the right people with the right mindset to work with, future plans and lots more. Hope you enjoy. Hey guys, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Awesome. Introduce yourself in what you do with the band.
Okay, I'm Jake. I'm the lead singer in the band. I also, manage some of the art direction of the band. That's primarily I'm the vocalist.
Awesome. Well, I am. My name is John. I do the guitars.
All the guitars, lead and rhythm. So very impressive man over here.
Oh, the shredding.
And Sam is apparently nowhere to be found.
Yeah, my name is Sam Goche. I do the drums in the band.
Awesome. So tell us about the band's story from beginning up to now.
Awesome. Yeah. So it'd probably be about a 3-year start or so. So it started out. I was actually doing some stuff with Jake's brother for about 6 months. He would sing. I did a bunch of guitars and stuff. And then when we started to get serious about it, Jake's brother, I love him to death, but he just, had other things going on, didn't have the time. And so that's when Jake came in. We then spent maybe a year and a half going through about 20 members or so, not because we suck, but it's very hard to find someone who's both dedicated, can, play their instrument well, and, actually was, around to show up, 2-3 times a week for everything. And through all that, what ended up happening is Sam actually went to high school with both myself and Jake. He went to NYU for drums, and he fit the part incredibly well. So when we brought Sam on, we found our bassist. We found the two of them within like a month, I think, of each other, very close. And then after that, everything just kind of took off, went well. We had the members, everything fit, everybody was there, dedicated, putting in the time, and then it was just kind of history from there.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, we had a previous band, John and I, and that was kind of a nightmare. John almost got sued. I had stuff stolen from me. Zila almost got punched by, when Zila came in right as that band was breaking up. And one of the guys wanted to fight him at one point, and it was just craziness, that band. That band had we went through members, 30 members, and it was just terrible. And so it was out of that sort of place, out of that frustration and that rejection and all that sort of stuff, that we put together this band and decided that we were really going to focus on just making an amazing set of recordings. That was where we were just forget everything else, all this craziness that's been going on. Let's just make some great music. And we found our amazing producer, Mike Ferretti. He was a Grammy-nominated producer. I met him he's the relative of a high school friend of mine. So he usually, he works with the big guys. He's a great producer, and he agreed to work with us, and that made all the difference. So that's a big part of what's made this band so successful.
Awesome. Sounded like that band was somewhat jinxed. Everything you did, it just went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it was tough. It was tough because we knew, John and I knew that we could definitely do this, and we were really working hard and really, putting the effort in and trying to do everything the right way. But, when you're working with other guys who don't have that mindset, or who are self-sabotaging, or, addicted to drugs, or whatever it is, it no matter how hard you work, you can't carry dead weight, which is why it was amazing when we found Zila and Sam, because they're just super, super talented musicians, really dedicated guys, and they added that amazing special secret sauce. Like, drums and bass often go like unnoticed, less so in metal than in other genres, but still. But they really are like the meat and bones of any good song, and we couldn't have found better, more talented guys than we did. So, that really just, again, it's a huge part of what has made this band so successful.
That's the thing about being a band. That's how it can be so tiring at times when you've got all the ambition, you've got all the energy, and you just like, what you want and you know how to succeed, and you've got the people who are like, yeah, and it's just like, no, and it's like you're pulling everyone along. It's like, if you're on the same page, then you can work so well. But if it's just you, then it's just you pulling everyone, and you're just pulling teeth, and it's just like, oh.
Yeah, and you can't pull teeth. You know what I mean? It's just you end up holding yourself back. You really have to find people who are willing to really grind with it, and who add something to the. It's not a team if you're the one doing all the work. You have to find people that they fill in for your strengths, and you fill in for their weaknesses, and everything else. And we really found that with this band. And no matter what, you're gonna if you're into the music business, you're gonna end up in situations like that, because it's a business that it really draws in sometimes people who think that they're gonna play and just everything's gonna land in front of them on a silver platter. So you'll always have to deal with those dead weight people, and you have to push through it, and you have to find what works for you, and then eventually you'll find the people that you just click with, and it'll take off from there. Or at least that's how it worked for us.
Exactly. That's what I've figured out since meeting the people that I've met online. Like, beforehand, I've like, is there actually people out there who want to work hard, or is it just a myth? But then I've come across the people that I've met online, I've met in person in America, and you realise that there are people out there who will and want to work as hard as you, and it's some of them people are rare to come by, but when you do find them, it's just like, finally, like, it's like a gold chest or something. You figured it, and it's like the lottery, and you can just team up, and then boom, you can just you can create whatever you want with the right mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
One of the things that's so hard in music is, even if you do find someone like that, right, you could have two totally different ideas of what you want to do. Right? You might find someone like that and they want to play folk, and, another person wants to play metal. And it's always going to be hard that even if it does work and you can get two people like that are in, they're always going to be pulling in different directions, so even if you do find them, and there are so few and far in between, and the thing that was hard for us was we stuck between two sets of people. We would stick between a musician that was very good at what they did, right? But came with a whole host of issues. Either they didn't want to show up, they didn't want to do anything, hardcore addicted to drugs, so I couldn't even do practice if they were there, right? Just whatever. Or the people that really wanted to do it, but quite frankly, like, they suck shit. They can't get the notes. It's like, and at that point you're like, dude, that's great, man. You want to come in and play, but if you don't even know, how to strum, your guitar, it's like, it's just not going to work. So,
Yeah. And when you find all of those things that you need in another musician or somebody that you want to work with, and all those factors coalesce, it's an amazing feeling, because it's like an instant bond, an instant, fraternity with those other people. And it's an amazing feeling when it all clicks, and you bring to life something that, like, to you, it was just like this vision. And then all of a sudden it's a real concrete thing, and it sort of gets up on its own two legs and starts to walk like it's got a mind of its own. I really feel that way about Stricken. it's like the band itself has a life of its own. It has its own personality and identity that's like a child of all of us, but it's even got its own things that it's sort of brought with it, which is, it's just an amazing and crazy feeling. It's unlike anything else.
Obviously, it's a great feeling when you know, like, you've got the right team behind you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it just sort of grows into its own sort of thing. Which, and a big part of the growth of the sound and the style and everything of the band was that we worked with, such an amazing producer who really brought, the songs, like, we had everything that we wanted in the songs, but he sort of breathed an emotional life into them. He like, choosing takes and stuff like that maybe we didn't think were the best, but he thought brought out a particular flavor that, like, endued the band, like, oh, your voice cracks a little bit here, but it's perfect for that moment because it makes it really emotional and poignant, and it really hammers home the message of the song. And just, deciding, like, what is the message of this song? What do you guys want to say? And making us, have to actually speak, because you're like, oh, I feel the message of this song, but you can't really vocalize it. And when you vocalize it, then it just becomes so much of a sharper vision. And that was a big part of the production process of the EP.
Awesome. Now we'll talk about your EP a little bit later, because I'm especially after what you just said, I'm keen to see how the whole process there happened. So I'm just wondering, what's the music scene like around you guys? Because obviously New Jersey's produced quite a few, really big bands over the years, especially like My Chemical Romance. Everyone knows them and stuff. So it'd be just interesting to see what it's the scene like around your area.
Yeah, so that's interesting, especially with us in northern New Jersey. We're in, like, actually, like, people think New Jersey and they think, like, the Jersey Shore and, like, Real Housewives and, like, all that type of thing, and, like, just piles of garbage, and that's the stereotype people have of New Jersey. But actually our area is very sylvan. It's very woodsy. There's a lot of, like, John and I grew up doing, like, lumberjack type things and, like, hiding in bushes and that sort of, like, the great outdoors, like, you wouldn't imagine in New Jersey, but luckily we actually have that where we're from. But because it's, like, a little bit less developed, it's actually sort of like New York City has, like, this gravity, and it sort of sucks all the musical talent and everything into it. And I would especially say for our local area, like, you think you would, like, bands like My Chemical Romance and stuff like that, so many bands come from New Jersey. But right now the scene there is mostly hardcore, which, if our record doesn't sound we're as far out from that as you can possibly be. We're much more melodic, and we're focused on, like, a totally different style of playing, and the emotional content even is very different. So our metal is definitely different than the metal that other people are playing around us. And I think that, it's hurt us in the past, but it's also helped us a lot to stand out. And that's why we ended up, going all the way up to #1 on Amazon Music Unlimited like we did, because, everybody listened to that and they were like, whoa, this is, like, so crazy different. It sounds familiar and yet like nothing I've ever heard, because we add so many different elements and everything. So I think that the local scene, again, it's mostly hardcore, it's punk, it's a lot of rap and hip hop, people spinning, which, it's a lot of fun, but it's obviously not who we are as musicians. But I think it's definitely a thriving scene. It's just not our scene.
Awesome. How did music start for each of you personally? I think we should let Sam answer that question, or Sam talk about that a little bit, because he's been really quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us, if you spend enough time with us, and this is the only thing that I'll speak for everybody about, each of us is like, we're compulsive people. None of us can really sit still. And as long as I've known the other two guys, it's always been like that. And our compulsion is not just limited to physical movement, but it's also our minds, our brains are always moving. Like, we just can't sit still. Maybe we're lazy, or maybe we're, sick or something. But anyway, I'm saying all this because what happens is my mind moves, and what comes into it as it's moving is like music. Different sounds, different things I hear, synthesizes everything, and I try to make sense out of it. So even when I was very, very young, I loved music dearly, but I never did it in a serious way until I was 12 or something. And at that point, I'd only really listened to my parents' music. So then I ended up getting into metal later. My parents aren't really into metal, I would say. But yeah, I guess that's my general origin story right there.
Awesome. What about the other guys?
I would say that Sam really put it very eloquently. Like, music for me has always been an inherent impulse. For as long as I remember, I have always been singing. Like, I used to sing in church as a little kid, and old ladies would come up and say, "Oh, you have such a nice voice," because I was that obnoxious kid in the back that was singing super loud, so everybody could hear him over everyone else. And just everywhere I go and everything I do, I'm always listening for music, and I'm always I have a tune going in my head constantly. I'm humming to myself. It's just it's part of my lifeblood. It's part of who I am, and just every sense of the word, my identity is just wrapped up with pleasant sonic music. So yeah, I would say Sam was right. It's a compulsion. It's just an inherent characteristic that I've always sort of carried with me. And how I got into metal was actually, I'd always listened to classic metal and 80s metal and all that type of stuff. And then John sort of introduced me to newer bands, and then I just fell in love with what I heard, and the rest is history.
For me, it was a little bit different. Not too different, and I definitely, Sam, I agree with you about the can't sit still. But for me, it was, I guess, a little bit less of a romantic type of thing, and it was more of a defining moment. And I think I was either 10 or 11, maybe 12, somewhere in there. And I heard Metallica play for the first time. And I remember, the entire rest of that year was just spent on a shitty acoustic guitar, because I was like, I'm doing that. I'm fucking doing exactly that. That just, the guitars hit me, just everything. I loved it. And, and that was kind of it for me. I mean, that was just what grabbed my attention, what I liked. It was rebellious. It was odd. It was fun. It was so interesting from everything I'd heard at that point, being, 10 or 11. And so that was kind of my start, just with that,
Good old Metallica.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the main influences for your band?
Let's do the same order. Yeah, Sam, why don't you start, and then Jake and I'll finish up.
Okay, yeah, I'd say we're pretty heavily influenced by, definitely by Metallica, like John said, but also another big influence of ours is Avenged Sevenfold. We were talking a lot about them as we were writing the album and practicing. Yeah, I mean, I like some of the classic metal stuff. As you'll hear on the record, I don't play double bass. I don't even own a double bass pedal, so definitely some of the newer stuff, like the quick stuff. You're not gonna hear me doing that. So that I've listened to it and I like it, but I wouldn't say that that's an influence for this particular record coming from the drums.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what's great about that too, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but the four of us obviously have kind of a base that's together, but we all have such individual I mean, Sam went to school for jazz, and so which is great, you know what I mean? And I think, Sam, you hit the nail on the head exactly. Is you didn't come into it and tried to play metal drums specifically, you know what I mean? You didn't come in let's just throw in the double bass pedal, and so yeah, that worked out very well. But Jake, it was your turn, so I'll shut the hell up.
Okay. So yeah, like Sam said, Avenged Sevenfold was a huge influence on us. I also like bands that are more in like the emo genre, like My Chemical Romance, and I think lyrically they were a big influence on us. But there's also just, like one of my favorite metal bands is System of a Downs. I love System. But a big part of this band and what makes this band unique and has made us uniquely successful is that we all come from really, really different, diverse music backgrounds. So Sam went to NYU for jazz drumming, one of the best programs in the country probably for jazz drumming, and that's his background. He's originally a jazz player. I've been into alternative my entire life, so I like listening to like singer-songwriters like Damien Rice even, or like more strictly alternative bands like Counting Crows. John is like, more into like power metal and all that type of thing. He's really like a more of a metal purist than the rest of us, I think. But, he does have different styles and stuff like that he plays that, maybe we're less into than he is. And then Zila has, always been into prog and like more like that type of like Dream Theater type. And Coheed and Cambria are like his two like big bands that have influenced his style of playing. And I think that we do a good job of blending elements from all these different musical styles that we're obsessed with, because we're all like just music aficionados. We just love music any way you put it to us. And we all sort of like found common ground in playing like heavy metal. And it's resulted in something that like every time people hear it, we get different feedback, but it's all positive feedback, but everyone says something different about the way the band sounds to them. And that's part of what we were going for. We were going for like, we want to make metal that is hauntingly familiar and yet so strikingly different that you have to comment on it.
Which is great, you made it a little bit different rather than just having the people say the same old thing. You've managed to create music that makes people think differently, and it affects them differently. Yeah.
And that's, music is communication. It's a form of communicating, mostly raw emotion. People like a song makes you feel a certain way, and that's why we were so stoked when we saw all this like positive feedback. It was really well received, and everybody had something different to say about how it spoke to them, which that was exactly what we're going for, and that's like the point of making music.
Definitely.
You want to go into some of your influences?
Yeah, I mean, so Metallica was first and foremost, but then the second one that had, those guys touched on it a little bit, but for me, hands down was Avenged Sevenfold, and the reason for that is the way those guys make music to me is incredible. Just it's the amount of talent and thought that goes into each one of their songs, and the way they layer it on is like unbelievable. I mean, not that other bands necessarily don't do that, but I mean with them, some of their songs have 7-8 guitars in them. Like 10 different vocals or stuff like that. It's so layered on and together that I just I loved it, because it was doing something like that allows you to compose as opposed to just make a song. You know what I mean? You actually get to compose. Like, when does this come in? When does this come down? Who comes up? Who goes back? Things like that.
It's so interesting with a band like that. It's so interesting with a band like that to peel back the layers and to like, I've always been big into like working my ears so I can hear songs better, more intricately, and pick up on little nuances and things in the background. And it's great with songs like that where there's just so many layers that you can just, every time you hear it, you hear something totally different, something totally new that makes you appreciate the song in sort of a different light, which is, something that we were trying to go for on this record too, even though, our production budget value, makes it so that it's a lot difficult. We got to just go through the studio and not take up everybody's time and all that. But we were really trying to go for that big, lush, detailed sound. And I think we achieved a good deal of it too.
It also says the main thing, if you're happy with the results, because obviously you're not going to have like an unlimited budget like Avenged Sevenfold do with their massive sounding records, but if you can find that in that short space of time, if you can just use every minute of it and use it wisely, then you can create the results that you've got in mind.
Yeah. And I mean, even like more minimalist songs can be super, super touching. Like, again, like I said, I listened to like Damien Rice, and some of his songs are literally just him and a guitar. So there's definitely a balance to strike between the maximalist and the minimalist approach. And I think that we did a good job of tapping into both things and hitting people's brains in that way, where it's like, ooh, it starts out and it's just a guy's voice and a guitar that's like almost completely clean. And then it just builds and builds and builds, and it slaps you with a heavy chorus. And you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And it forces you to feel something.
And the other thing too, that when we talk about production budgets and stuff, is that, I think especially a lot with at least the bands and stuff that we knew, right, when we were kind of starting out, is everyone thinks that it would be different if they had, $1 million budget to do their album, or if they had a better, things like that. And, that obviously helps. If you have, 10 people in the studio and, all this stuff, it helps. But, at the end of the day, I really believe if you can't do it on a limited budget, it's not, you just, if you make shit and you record shit well, you just have polished shit, right? It's kind of true. It's sort of like,
yeah.
Everyone's like, oh, if I had a lot of money, I could start saving money. It's like, well, if you don't have money, you're not going to save money if you do have money. You know what I mean? It's a similar thing. You can keep layering on synth pads all day, but if you don't know how to write good music, it's just going to sound like really, really loud synth pads that somebody doesn't know how to play. So obviously fundamental musicianship is present in the EP, and it makes a difference when you can actually play what you play. I'll call out Sam here on this, because this was not the case with me. But I mean, Sam did most of his takes for his songs in like three or four takes.
He basically just went through clean. You want to elaborate on that, Sam?
Yeah. He was basically good the first time, and we did 2 or 3 more takes just to make sure we had it. But I mean, even something, and same for the singer too. His bass tracks were done. I think he had one song, right? He made it the entire song.
You're cutting in and out.
Oh, just a tiny bit. But, all right. Anyways. If I'm cutting that, I'll pass the baton.
I was gonna say, like, if someone like Sinister Gates picked up a £50 Amazon guitar, he'll probably make it sound good because he's got the technique to make anything sound good. But if someone who doesn't play guitar picked up a £1,000 guitar, they're gonna make it sound bad because they haven't had the experience, or they don't know how to play guitar.
Yeah, recently, because I had electric guitars my whole life, and now I'm in an apartment, so obviously you can't plug in and turn up the sound. So I've been playing. I went to Guitar Center. It was actually a Christmas gift for me, but I had a cheap acoustic guitar. I mean, like the guitar most people get. And it's funny because now as I've gotten better, I mean that thing sounds better. Like I can make that thing sound better than I could even like 2 years ago playing on a many $1,000 guitar. It's just it's I think it was $60. It's cheap. It's not supposed to sound good, but like even so, it's like it does come down to a lot of the skill, and stuff like that. It doesn't always matter what you play on, or things like that.
Exactly.
Sam, you want to elaborate on how you recorded your part for it? Because I think we want to include you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm having a great time. Silently agreeing with everything you guys are saying, but like they said, I mean that's just how I generally go about stuff. Like I like music that feels natural and sounds natural, and the best way that I've found to achieve that is just to do it all like at once. Like the song that you're hearing, the 3-minute 19-second song, it took me 3 minutes and 19 seconds to make that. To record that. I mean, there's a lot of effort that went into it previously, but that's just my style. That's like a stylistic thing. But definitely, I think you can hear it if you listen for it. The fact that it's not like a combination of like a million different takes, like all pieced together. Like I didn't like redo this fill here, redo that fill there. It just came out, and then we picked which one we liked best, and that was it.
Awesome. So yeah, talk about like the EP itself, that lyrics and inspiration behind it?
So yeah, I'll let John talk on that the most, but just a little bit of background. Like I said, we were coming out of another band. It was a bad situation. We were really frustrated, and we wanted to make, an EP and just laser focus, just like, let's make an EP that sounds really good. And we sort of channeled that frustration into, our writing, and we, came up with 4 songs, and they were written in various ways, and I'll let John touch on that a little bit. But at the end of the day, the songs are, until they were recorded, they were continually evolving animals. We were changing parts in every single song in the studio. Like the day of, we were like, you know what? Let's actually change it to this. Because so many things that sound great playing live or sound great to your ear on playback, they might not maybe we need to string out the verse just a little bit longer, or add a little bit of breathing room here, or right now we have a 3-beat rest, let's cut it down to 2 because then it won't feel as awkward, or stuff like that. We were changing all the way down the line into the studio. But I'll let John touch a little bit more on how each song individually was written.
Yeah, so I mean, usually what we do, and we really have 2 ways of writing so far that we found that work well, and one way is that, someone will, write a song out, come up with most of the parts, bring it to the bands, and then each member sort of takes it from there. And then the other way is kind of about half that, where, one member will come up with a part they think is cool. It could be a chorus, it could be a verse, it could be whatever, right? And then we'll bring that, and then we sort of write the rest together. And so this EP was split exactly in half. So we have 2 songs with As the Hours Tick and No Act of Martyrdom, which were, and again, they're not mine because I could not have finished them. But, I kind of came in and was like, here's what we got. What do you guys think? We went through, and, I'll have a vocal melody in line, or words or stuff, and I'll kind of throw that to Jake. I'll have a bass part. I'll throw that to Zila. I'll have maybe a tiny idea for Sam. But then what's great about that is even if I come in with something that's more or less written, right, Sam's still going to take those drums and do something that I could never do. And it's going to sound, entirely different. You know what I mean? Jake takes the vocals, does his thing. Zila takes the bass, take that. And, and then when I finally hear it, even my guitar changes. So that's kind of the first way, right? And then the second way is, one of us will bring in something. And so this is how the other 2 were written. Black Sunrise and Void, which is where I came in, I had a part or 2. And we just sort of all, sort of playing together. Where's it going? Right, what happens, and then so each thing would get pieced out, and then usually what would happen that way is we come up in practice, come up with a part or 2, a verse, a chorus. I'd take that back, just sort of lay it down on cheap recording software just to have it. I would go, okay, cool, where's it going next? And I'd come up with 10 different ideas. It could go here, it could get clean, it could get hard and heavy, it could get whatever, right? Then I would bring that back, and then sort of the parts emerge that way. And then like Jake said, when we were finally in the studio. And that was a bit of a test for me as well, because, I would come in and I would have my guitars lined up and this is what we're playing. And Mike would take a look at them and say, you know what, I think we're going to do this, and then so it was a little bit of, learning on the spot, we got to change this, come up with this part, a couple of times I would try to get something, and then so we would start, recording Zila because, maybe he would pick it up a little bit quicker on bass. And while he was doing that, I was sitting in the other room practicing, trying to make it smooth, things like that. But that's really how the process went for us.
Awesome. So how did that? You talked highly of him earlier, but the producer, you mentioned you talked a lot about him. So how did he work with you? How much of an effect did he have on you, and just the whole process of working with him, the experience?
So he really it's difficult to put into words exactly what he did for us, because it's more of like an encouragement, a nurturing, a mentorship than just do this, just do that. He has just such a deep knowledge of music because he's worked with some incredible bands. So he has a way of steering you to what you really want. I hear what you're trying to say in this verse. Is there a better way you could put it? Or, could you change this maybe a little bit? And then it's never in the sense of he tells you what to do or he tells you what not to do. He sort of just recommends that you double check everything and that you look at something from a different perspective, and he plays it against something else where you're like, well, you got this, so maybe you want to highlight this. maybe, you want these spaces to be more about vocals. So instead of having this, complicated guitar part, maybe like simplify it or pare it down a little bit because we're really trying to hit these lyrics home. So it was always like a nurturing sort of relationship. It was never like he told us exactly what to do. It was always helping us to find our voice. And that's just, he's, incredible in that way. And he really helped us become better musicians and to better know ourselves. And I think that's the mark of like a really great producer. And, the results speak for themselves in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, because obviously a lot of bands don't want to come into the studio and just have some guy who presses a button and because some bands need that extra member for that period of time to like have a look at all the music side of things and like the lyric side of things and like sometimes rip it up, and the band might be like, oh, what are you doing? We've just spent a lot of time doing this, but in the long run they look back and be like, because of your hard work and you actually caring about our music, it made us work that little bit harder and made us better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely, and he helped us to keep everything in perspective as like a holistic, complete work, like, keeping the 4 songs collectively in mind and making it so that they fit together as one, not just individual work, but making them all sound like one complete work too, which is, we've recorded stuff on our own and stuff like that. Everything ends up sounding so different, like their guitar tones are different here or there and that type of thing. And so he helped us to really identify a sound that we wanted to pursue for these 4 songs.
Awesome. Anyone got anything else to follow on from that?
It sounds pretty good. Yeah, I feel like we've hit on a lot of great points there and whatnot. To be honest, I think we've done pretty much from the start through this. Jake, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of good stuff. Can we just like throw in like a little plug in or something for our social media?
Yeah, I'm gonna say like, what's your plans for the future and so on? What's your plans for this year and further afield?
Okay, so we have our first music video coming out for the song As the Hours Tick in October. We're going to be pursuing another music video after that and then completing our full album by this time next year. So be on the lookout and make sure you check us out at Stricken Band NJ on Facebook, and you can find us on every streaming service and download our music, the complete EP on Amazon or Apple Music.
Awesome. Have you got like any names in the frame for producing the next album and so on?
We're probably gonna stick with Mike Ferretti. We don't want to release too many details about what we have planned for the complete album, but
you got stuff in mind? Yeah,
we've got some stuff in mind. It's gonna it's probably gonna be a continuation of this EP, emotionally and tonally. So keep on the lookout for that. It's gonna be something special.
Awesome. And I think unless anybody else has got anything else to say, I think we could end it there.
Yeah, I think that's good. You're just great, having us on. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, always. Thanks a lot, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a good one. Yeah.